Welcome back, squad. Thank you so much for checking out another episode of Full Ride, the college recruiting podcast. We are powered by URECRUITU, and I am your recruiting coach, Kito Delgado. And just in case you are new to the squad, new to the podcast, our mission is to empower, to educate and equip our student athletes and their parents so they can take complete control of their college recruiting journey, because it's tough out there. I don't know if you know the stats, but only 7% of current high school student athletes go on to play sports in college. Less than 1% of current college athletes are actually on full athletic scholarship. So what does that mean? Not only is it difficult to get seen and noticed and to earn a scholarship to college or play in college, but then once you get there, you know, this misconception that everybody is on a full scholarship is a big myth. So through URECRUITU, we really help our families navigate the process. We sit down with you. We provide you with a game plan, a personalized game plan with some winning strategies. We hold your hand along the way, and ultimately our goal is to help you realize your dreams of playing beyond high school. So if we can be of help to you in any single way through our coaching program, I invite you to head on over to urecruitu.com. That's urecruitu.com. Learn more about us. And give some serious thought to signing up for our coaching program. We call it Study Hall, where we have one coaching call per month with you. And in the meantime, we also allow you to email us questions each month that we answer within a 24-hour period of time. So again, that's urecruitu.com. And I am your coach. Again, like I said before, Kito Delgado. But for the rest of you who tune in every single Thursday, what's going on? I appreciate you continuing to tune in. It means a lot to us. But I want to get right into this week's episode because I have an amazing guest who has joined me. His name is Alan Stein. And for about 20 years, 15, 20 years, he was a high performance, performance coach. He worked with, basketball players of all ages, primarily high school age, college age, and even some pros. But he was a trainer essentially, and he helped them maximize, their abilities. And about 4 or 5 years ago, he decided to take the lessons that he learned in working with high performance athletes, and now he is a motivational keynote speaker. And he works with organizations such as American Express, Pepsi, Sabra, Starbucks, Charles Schwab, and even Penn State football. And he goes in and talks to them about a number of different things, mainly about high performance and about leadership and about accountability. And I really wanted to have him on the show because a lot of our young athletes don't get exposure to these types of speakers. We hear the same lessons and the same thoughts and, from our parents, from our coaches and from our teachers. And those are obviously great, people that they should be listening to. But mom and dad, sometimes our student athletes, our children, that need to hear a message from somebody else. So I wanted to bring you Alan because he is an amazing storyteller. He has great experience, great perspective. So I really encourage you to listen to this episode with your son, with your daughter. Listen to it together, and I hope it really empowers you and educates you and it even inspires you to some degree. So without further ado, here is this week's interview with Alan Stein Jr. Alan, how you doing today, my man?
I am fantastic. How are you?
I can't complain. I just want to thank you once again for hopping on Full Ride. And our guests are in for a treat. So real quick, I didn't spend a whole lot of time reading your bio. Why don't you, let our audience know who you are and what you do today, and a little bit about your background, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure, be happy to. I spent almost 20 years as a basketball-specific performance coach. I specialized mostly at the youth and high school level, and was able to work at 2 nationally renowned programs for 2 Hall of Fame caliber coaches here in the Washington, D.C. area. I worked for Stu Vetter at Montrose Christian for 7 years, which is where Kevin Durant graduated from. And then I worked for Mike Jones at DeMatha Catholic High School for 6 years, which is where Victor Oladipo and Markelle Fultz and a whole host of other NBA players graduated from. And those are 2 Nike elite programs. So that got me introductions to doing some contracted work for Nike basketball, Jordan Brand, USA basketball. So I got an opportunity to work some of the summer skills academies and some events for the best players in the world. So I had an opportunity to observe and work with and work for and work alongside many of the best players in the NBA and many of the best coaches in the game. And I did that, as I said, for almost 20 years. And then 4 years ago, I decided to leave the basketball training space directly and make the leap over to the corporate speaking world, where I've been ever since as a keynote speaker. And I do workshops and trainings and basically take all of the lessons that I learned through the game of basketball from these amazing players and coaches. And I show folks in the business world how to utilize those same mindsets and strategies and habits and disciplines to raise their game in business.
Absolutely. And so as I mentioned, squad, in my introduction, Alan, I really want to try to bring to you all, different points of view. So you're not always listening to me, ramble every single Thursday. So Alan, I'm really excited because I think you're going to have a lot of great advice, not only for our student athletes, but our parents, our high school coaches, and even maybe some entrepreneurs and, business owners out there. So I want to, you mentioned how you've been surrounded and you worked with some really high performers, whether it's Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, and I've been following you for a little while now. Can you just kick us off with, the story that you share regarding Kobe Bryant? Obviously, we recently lost him. He's my favorite athlete of all time, and I think though the story that you share was really going to provide some great lessons for our young athletes out there. Because can you kick us off with that story?
Yeah, and what I'll do, I'll give kind of the abbreviated version of it, but certainly at the end, I'll make sure folks have my website where they can actually see a full video of it. But I had a chance to work the first ever Kobe Bryant Skills Academy back in 2007. And, at that time, Kobe was the best player in the game, somebody I really looked up to and idolized myself. And I had always heard this urban legend of how insanely intense his private workouts were. Legend had it that he called them blackouts, not even workouts, that he went so hard and was so focused that he called them blackouts. So I figured, now that I was on his camp staff, this was my best chance to get to see this and see what all the buzz was about. And he had the workout super early in the morning, and I went in and just kind of observed and just remembered that for the first while, I was just really surprised. And what I was surprised at was how basic Kobe's approach was, that the drills he was doing for the first 45 minutes of his private workout in the wee hours of the morning, he was doing basic pivoting drills and footwork drills and offensive moves. And that really surprised me because I figured, he's the best player in the world. He's probably going to be doing a lot of flashy drills and that type of thing. So I was a little bit confused, and my curiosity ended up getting the best of me because later that day at camp, I just had to know. So I asked him why he was doing such basic drills. And he basically said that the secret to his success is that he's never gotten bored with the basics. And I just remember that being a really epiphanal moment for me, because it's when I realized that just because something is basic, it doesn't mean that it's easy. People often use those words interchangeably as if they're synonyms, but they're not. Just because something is basic, it doesn't mean that it's easy. And Kobe understood how important it was to commit to the basics and to work towards mastery of the fundamentals during the unseen hours. That's what would lay the foundation for him being the best player he could be. And I've really tried to apply that same principle to everything I do in my life, and it certainly makes up the backbone of everything I share with the teams and organizations I speak to today.
And I love that story, and the reason why, and I was, I think everybody, regardless of your age and your background, can draw from that for sure. But I definitely wanted to to share that, because the way you tell that story from a standpoint of Kobe Bryant, I think a lot of our student athletes or young athletes, they hear their coach say it or their parents say it or teachers say it. So I just kind of wanted you to come in because you share it in a way where, so if Kobe Bryant, one of the best players to ever walk the planet Earth, if he says he wasn't afraid, he never got bored with the basics, young athletes, I really need you to really process that for a second.
Yes.
Like, yeah, you guys do your fancy crossovers. And, I think now in the social media world, everyone wants to go viral and do all these crazy highlights. I mean, you have even some of these trainers out there drinking the Kool-Aid, and I'm not knocking them, but, just the mastering the basics and never getting bored with mastering the basics. I think that's such a powerful story, and I think it was appropriate to kick off the episode that way. I've heard you also share in the past about, because I'm a big believer in this as well. I think, how our student athletes are actually managing their time. I think often, and maybe if they go to a library to study, they're there for 2 hours, but in that 2 hour period of time, they're on their phone, they're doing social media, they're going on the, different websites. They're there for 2 hours, but they're not really present and they're not really purposeful in their studying. Or if they go to the gym, they may be at a workout for 2 hours and they shoot a bunch of shots, but it's not really intentional. There's no real purpose behind it. So I've heard you talk about this. Can you talk about, for our young athletes, the importance of, whenever you approach something, whether it's in the gym, at the field, or in the classroom, the library, you want to really be purposeful in your training.
Absolutely. And really when people talk about time management, more than that, it's probably attention management or energy management. And I do think that's one of the things that makes it harder for players today is they have a lot more distractions than I had when I was their age. And to being able to block out those distractions so that you can be present in the moment and can put in purposeful work is the key. And that's really what it's all about. It's making sure that if you're working out or you're training, that you're doing so deliberately, you're doing so with intention, you're doing so with purpose. It's the difference between casually going into the gym and casually shooting for 2 hours or going in for 45 minutes with the goal of making a certain number of shots from a certain number of spots, setting up every single shot you take with a game-specific cut to get open, making sure you have perfect footwork and perfect form. It's the difference between saying, there's kind of a continuum. You have some players that say, I'm going to go in and take 500 shots. And then you have some players that say, I'm going to go in and make 500 shots. And then you have the real elite of the elite, the Kobe Bryants, that say, I'm going to go in and make one shot 500 separate times. And there's a big difference between those. The first two borderline, basically just manual labor and volume. The second is much more specific and intentional about trying to improve your craft. So, and because time, is rather limited. We only have 24 hours a day. And even that's not promised, as we've learned with Kobe's, very tragic and sudden passing. And if you're using a third of that to sleep, which you should be, that doesn't leave you a tremendous amount of time. So we got to make the most of our time. And the best way to make the most of our time is to be so deliberate and purposeful in what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And, there's a difference between just going into the gym and kind of getting a sweat and going in with specific goals and trying to achieve specific things that are very specific to what it is that you're looking to improve. So your work should be, if we're talking about basketball, it should be position specific. It should be game specific. If you know that you get 80% of your shots from these 2 or 3 areas on the court, well, that's where you should be practicing most of your shooting drills from, because that's where you actually use shooting in the game. You don't need to take, if you never take shots from the corners, you don't need to spend a ton of time practicing shots in the corners. It doesn't mean you can't spend any time there. It just means it's not in your best interest to waste a ton of time working on something that you won't actually need to do when the lights come on.
Yeah, it ultimately comes down to like just no wasted movement, right? And no wasted time. And so now, parents, I really want you to make sure you're playing that, for your son or your daughter. And I'll just kind of, translate that now to, college recruiting, right? I talk about this all the time. And, if I tell, a family that I'm working with, a student athlete, to say, hey, I want you to reach out to 10 coaches this week. I may say today, I only want you to reach out to them via email. So then you are really intentional and focused in on, okay, I'm going to send this email to this coach, these 10 coaches today. Or it can be, okay, I want you to call them, or I want you to, reply to their messages on social media. So it's the same type of thing. You can translate or transfer, the same habits that you are developing as an athlete to now to really take control of your college recruiting process. So we've already dropped some great game for our student athletes, and I need to now because now I may get in trouble, or I should say we, because now I have you're on my team here.
Yes.
I know some parents, may not want to hear the type of tough love that you're about to provide, because I certainly share in your sentiments. But, recently, particularly on your Instagram and your Twitter page, you've talked a lot about, this, the conduct of parents at games. Now, I'll say clearly this plays an important role in college recruiting, because coaches are judging and watching parents in the stands. But even beyond that, can you just talk about, why you're so passionate about, sharing ideas of how parents should really be acting in the stands, not just from a college recruiting standpoint, but also just from a standpoint of creating an enjoyable experience, for their son or daughter?
Oh, most certainly. And that's really the number one reason that I do want to hopefully provide helpful suggestions. I want to make sure that I preface it with the fact that, I love sports parents. I am a sport parent. I have 3 children that all play youth sports. And I know the sacrifices that moms and dads and the guardians make for their children, and, through time and money and driving your kids everywhere and supporting them at games. So I hope everyone takes this, with the sentiment that it's meant, which is I want to provide some things that can be helpful, because I absolutely love and appreciate and respect sports parents. But it has been my own observation, and keep in mind that I've been around elite level youth sports for my entire life. I started playing sports when I was 4 or 5 years old, and 4 decades later, in between then, I worked in youth and high school sports, and now I have my own children that are in sports. So I have literally been around youth sports for 40 years, and I've seen a lot of well-intended but misguided behavior from parents. And I just say on the sidelines, whether they're in the bleachers or what have you. And I say well-intended because I know that everyone listening to this, I know that you love your children just as much as I love mine. I know that you want them to have a great sport experience, just like I want for my children. But you may not realize that some of the things that you may be doing could be undermining that. And I'm just such a big advocate, because I'm a huge believer that sports is a tremendous platform to teach life lessons, and that the vast majority of people listening to this, and very highly likely even my own children, will not play professional sports, which means we need to be getting something out of sport other than a future vocation. And the things that you can get out and learn from sports are the life lessons of leadership and accountability and self-reliance and hard work and communication and being a team player. There's all of these values and principles that we can use sport to help make our children happier, more fulfilled, and more well-rounded when they grow up. And I just hate to see that environment get polluted. And it really comes from two main areas that I see. The first, I see a lot of parents coaching from the sideline. And while they're not necessarily drawing plays or anything like that, they're yelling instructions. And this is happening even at very young ages. My daughter's 7 years old and plays on a second grade basketball team. And it's amazing how many adults are screaming directions at the exact same time. All these different parents are yelling things like shoot it, pass, rebound, move your feet, bend your knees. And it's coming from like 30 people at once. And we have to realize that two things. One, it's my belief, and please know, anyone listening, I'm not here to tell people what's right or wrong, and I'm not here to tell people what's good or bad. I'm simply going to share my belief, having worked in elite athletics for 30, 40 years. And that is, the instruction should only come from the coach. The only person that should be telling those players what to do should be the coach. And one, that's their job. It's not the parent's job. And two, it helps the child stay focused. If they only have to listen to one adult, that's a lot easier than listening to 19 different adults. And especially when adults are yelling conflicting information. And it's also you have to understand that young players, especially, I mean, in the youth level, they don't process information as fast as we do as adults. So when you're yelling things like pass and shoot and bend your knees, you're actually making the environment much more chaotic and much more disorienting for them. You're actually making the game harder because now you're robbing them of the ability to make their own decision. They're almost like little robots waiting for you to say something, and that's not good for their own development, and it's certainly not good for fun. So really, I don't believe parents should be yelling any type of instructions. I think the only thing parents should be doing is supporting not only their child, but all of the children out there, and doing so in a very positive way, and just kind of clapping and cheering and being supportive, but not yelling anything instructive, not yelling what to do. Then the other part I see, and this is unfortunately becoming a lot more increasing, is either disparaging remarks towards officials or disparaging remarks towards the coach or the other team. You know, I was at an elite level high school game the other night. DeMatha was playing Paul VI High School, two nationally renowned teams. DeMatha was ranked number 2 in the country at the time. Paul VI is led by a McDonald's All-American named Jeremy Roach that's going to Duke. I mean, 2 elite level programs. And I had my sons with me, and the 2 people I was sitting next to, one of them continued to use the F word about every other word. Now, I don't have virgin ears. Like, I have no problem with foul language, but I also believe there's a time and a place for it. And I don't believe a high school basketball game is a time or a place to be yelling the F word, and was berating the referee, was berating the coach. You know, everything the coach said, this guy's an idiot. I can't believe he's doing this. It's just not helpful. And I find that when parents are blaming referees or blaming coaches, not only is that not helpful in the moment, but I'm afraid that what you're doing is you're setting a very bad precedent moving forward, because you're basically modeling and teaching for your child that it's okay to make excuses, it's okay to blame other people, and it's okay to complain when things don't go your way. And I don't believe in doing any of those 3 things. I believe everyone needs to have extreme ownership and hold themselves accountable. And it's okay if you disagree with a coach's decision. It's okay if you disagree with a referee's call, but it doesn't mean that you have to be disparaging in doing so. And for me, it's the macro level. It's not even just the yelling at the ref that makes a big deal. It's you're teaching your child to blame someone else for the reason they weren't successful. And I also find it fascinating because referees are human beings. Why would we not expect referees to make mistakes? The kids are going to make plenty of mistakes. I mean, do you know how many times the kid misses a shot or turns the ball over in youth basketball? All of the time. So why would we expect a referee to be perfect when the players aren't perfect? So those types of things happen. So to me, if parents can learn to just be positive, to cheer for everyone on the team, not yell instructions, and definitely don't yell anything disparaging to anyone, I think that would help provide a more fertile environment for the players to learn, to grow, to develop, but most importantly, to actually have more fun.
I love that. And I can, I'm so glad that, thank you for sharing that. You really went in a very nice way. I know I like how you kind of, try to provide a soft landing at the beginning. I'm honestly, I guess, yes, I love my parents, but I love our student athletes even more. Yes. And I just want to make sure that, at times I'm just really straightforward and I'm blunt. And this is one of those situations where I'm like that, because I just want to really protect the integrity of, our students and our young people. And not only are we, at times I say we, because I'm a parent, so I'll throw myself on the bus too. My daughter is 6 years old and she plays soccer, and I can see myself dribble Melina, dribble the ball, pass the ball. So I even had to catch myself doing it. So I'm critiquing myself here too. But we have to be good examples for our son or daughters. We have to model the right behavior. So if that was tough. People
are shocked when I go to my children's games because I don't say a word. Now, this is just my preference. I don't even cheer or clap. I literally make no noise during the entire game. I just sit there and smile because I enjoy watching my children do something they love. Yeah. And the only thing I say to them after is, I love to watch you play. There was some studies done, and I don't remember who did it, but basically said those are the most empowering 6 words you can say to your child. Not, I'm glad you won, or way to score 20 points, or I can't believe you did that. Don't say anything except I love to watch you play. And right now I'm referring mostly to youth age, which I'm considering anything below middle school. So I'm not implying that, that's what you have to say when your college son or daughter walks off of the court, but at the youth levels, it's important. But here's the other thing that I don't think people quite understand. I mean, let's just I think the most common thing in youth basketball is for a parent to yell, shoot it. And what they have to understand is, first of all, this is coming from someone that spent his entire life as a basketball performance coach. Shooting should be a decision. It's not a reaction. I don't even believe coaches should yell, shoot it. And there's a reason for that. At the youth level, when you yell, shoot it, by the time the child hears it, processes it, understands what you're talking about, and then acts upon it and shoots it, it's no longer a good shot because 1 or 2 seconds has gone by and it's no longer a good shot. So it's kind of like, if you're standing on the train tracks and a train going 200 miles an hour is 3 feet away from you, yelling, get out of the way, ain't going to help. You're going to get hit by the train because it's done. It's too late. And it's the same thing. Yelling, shoot it, actually just adds more chaos, because then what they do is they listen to you, they process it, and they shoot it, and then it's no longer a good shot. And then somebody critiques that and says, well, why did you take that shot? That was a bad shot. And now the kid's confused. Well, my mom or dad just yelled, shoot it, and then I shot it, and the coach just told me that was a bad shot. Now I don't know what to do, because remember, these kids are still learning the game. I'm not talking about someone yelling to Kyrie Irving to shoot it. He has the wherewithal to discern what's a good shot and what's not. He can block out people screaming. But when you're in a small gym with a bunch of 7-year-olds and someone hears their own parent yell, shoot it, the kid's probably going to do that. And it's just not in the best interest to be yelling those things. And it's the same thing with any of that. I mean, I can say this in kind of a comical tongue-in-cheek way, but parents yell, move your feet, move your feet. I mean, that's just a useless phrase. Of course they're going to move their feet. What else could they possibly move? That's the way that we as human beings travel the earth. We walk and we run. I mean, it's something that I think parents, and I do mean this sincerely with all the love and grace I have in my heart. I think parents believe that if they're not yelling something and they're just being quiet, that they're not being supportive. So they try to think of what is the best thing I can yell. Well, I've been to a bunch of games and I hear a bunch of people yelling, shoot it and pass it and move your feet. So I'm just going to jump on board and I'm going to yell what everybody else is yelling. And it doesn't make it right. I mean, people, when you're on the free throw line, what does everybody yell? Bend your knees. That's not always good advice. That might not be the problem with why they missed the first free throw. You're just yelling that because you've heard someone else yell that. So now you're yelling. So what if the reason they missed that free throw is because they're not focusing on the right part of the rim, or they're using their guide hand, the thumb on their guide hand, and it's affecting the shot. So they're missing free throws for something that has nothing to do with their knees. And now while they're trying to figure that out and process that, you're yelling for them to do something that has nothing to do with that. And that's kind of a problem. And I know parents are well-intended and they want to be supportive and they feel like being quiet means they're not supportive. But in my opinion, the best way I support my kids is I show up, I sit in my folding chair, and I don't say a word. I let them figure it out. And I think that's important. And the last thing I'll say on this, because I don't want this to sound like I'm just scolding parents, but there's two scenarios that I think are somewhat comical, and I hope parents can appreciate the analogy. The first would be all of these youth sports parents would never show up at their son or daughter's school, walk into math class, and start screaming instructions. Add, subtract. No, you got to divide. You got to you got to use the remainder. You got to put that up. They would never do that. One, because contextually it's inappropriate, but two, how hard would it be to do your math work if someone was screaming at you the entire time? And it's no different when you're trying to process shooting, passing, rebounding, or defending. And if that's not comical enough, imagine any parent listening to this, if 15 7-year-olds showed up at your work tomorrow and started screaming at whatever you do for a living. Answer the phone, staple, send that email. And they just start yelling. It'd be really hard for you to concentrate and do your job. And it's the same thing. And I know I do want that to give somewhat of a comical approach, but really it's contextually very similar when we do those things. So I hope that parents take this at the light at which I'm sharing it, which is I'm just trying to provide things that hopefully they can find helpful, because I want all of us to band together. And I really do have such an appreciation for sports parents, but just don't yell instructions and don't yell anything disparaging. It'll make it better for everyone.
Boom. I mean, you said it all better than
mic drop.
You said it all better than I possibly can. And so how does this translate to college recruiting? Families, it's a couple things. Number one, I think just so you guys know, everything Alan said is way more important than the recruiting part. Okay. But, just as a caveat now, because again, this is a college recruiting show.
Yeah. I can tie it directly to college recruiting if you want.
I'm going to try, though. I'm going to try.
You go ahead, and then I'll tell you my stance.
Because I also want to make sure I get an opportunity for you to share some advice to coaches and
sure.
Also talk about your book. And we're only got like 15 more minutes. So,
yes.
But I will say this, so from a recruiting standpoint, obviously your son or daughter has to perform well at the game. So if you're a distraction, if you're doing anything that could be possibly, prohibiting them from playing at a high level by shouting instructions, that's hurtful to them.
Absolutely.
They're not going to perform at a peak level. But then two, I'm telling you right now, and you could probably attest to this, Alan, because, you went to, you played, you were a coach or you were involved in two high level programs. Coaches also evaluate parents. And I'm telling you, the way you kind of conduct yourself in the stands, fair or not, they're going to, if you're like that quiet parent, doesn't say anything, just kind of just clap where appropriate, that type of stuff. If a coach is watching you, they're going to say, okay, great. You know what? Their son or daughter is someone who I'd love to have on my team, because I know I'm not going to have any issues with the coach. With the parent. But if you're shouting instructions, if you're swearing, if you're yelling to to the coaches, but you're yelling to your student athlete, coaches are going to be like, you know what? I have another player who's just as good as this kid. I'm going to offer them a scholarship because their parents are quiet and I don't got to deal with it. So
yeah. Well, and on a macro level, a coach will say, if I see a parent disparaging the referees and blaming them, making excuses for why their child, turned the ball over and missed a shot or doesn't play, complaining about the coach or the referee. I don't know any more way to say this other than if you as a parent complain, blame others, and make excuses, there's a very good chance you are raising a child who will also blame others, make excuses, and blame others. And that's the problem, because what the coach is saying, if this parent is going to model behavior that blames everyone but their child for their low performance, then the kid is going to do the same thing. And I don't want to coach a player that makes excuses, blames others, and complains. And that's on a macro level what the problem is. It's not even the parent's behavior in the moment that's the big deal. It's that old adage that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And a parent that berates referees usually has a child that comes home and complains about the referees. And they both do that in the car on the ride home. Like, I can't believe the ref didn't call that foul on you, Johnny.
Or
that's BS. Yes. Or I can't believe that coach doesn't play you. And they just feed each other. And once again, this has nothing to do with whether the parent is right. The coach may have made a very poor decision. The referee may have blown the worst call in the history of the game. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the accountability of not blaming or complaining, because then that's what your kid's going to do. And that's what I think is most important. And that can absolutely have a huge effect on your college recruiting, because colleges, as you just said, they not only want good players, but they want people that are going to be of high character and easy to coach and easy to work with. And if you as a parent are undermining that with your behavior, then you're actually a detriment to your child's college recruiting, not an asset.
And again, folks, I'm talking to Alan Stein Jr., who, by the way, has spent, I think he said 13 years, 7 and 6 years, respectively, at 2 nationally Nike, high caliber, type programs. So we take it for what it's worth. I'm going to move on, but Alan, you just dropped fire.
Awesome.
Listeners, squad, members of our squad, you got to really make sure you're good teammates and you share out that, this episode, so more parents can really hear such an important and timely message. But I do want to move on. So we've talked for, some great game for our athletes. We've got some great game for our parents. Maybe they don't want to hear it or not, but I think, they'll marinate on it and they'll come around. But now let's talk also now about our high school coaches, because you were around some really high caliber programs and coaches. Yep. Can you just talk about, maybe, I think a lot of coaches that they get into this game, particularly at that high school, that youth level, it's because they just want to give back. Right? They want to give back. They love the sport. They're great people, but they may not really know what it takes to truly build a culture, of accountability, of holding student athletes to a high standard. So can you just kind of share some advice for, our young coaches, or even some of our experienced coaches who, want to try to take their coaching? It's not so much from a standpoint of just winning games, but just,
right.
More so from an impact standpoint. Just from being around the coaches that you've been around, what's some advice that you can give to some of our coaches out there that can help them become even better at what they're trying to do?
Well, the very first piece of advice I think is coaching mantra 101 is the most important mindset you can have as a coach. And that is thinking to yourself, it's not about me, it's about you. And that you is your players and your team, and that you're making decisions to provide the best environment and the best experience for your players, that you're all about their development and getting them to be the best that they can be individually and collectively, so that they can attain their goals, whether it's winning a championship or a player going off and playing into college. But you're doing everything you can to empower and enable that young person to get the most out of the game. So it's not about you. It's not about your ego. It's not about your win-loss record. It's all about it being in service of your players and in many cases, your assistant coaches. And in order to do that, you have to truly care about your players as people first and as players second. You have to create a connection with them before you even try to coach them. So you have to care about them, what's going on in their lives off the court as well. And I know that there's varying degrees to this. I know there's a huge difference between, coaching a group of fourth graders and coaching at an elite high school. But both require that you care about your kids and you care about their development and their fun. It's also about realizing that you have to create an environment and a culture that is in alignment with your beliefs, that the way you behave and the way your players behave is in alignment with the standards you've set and the beliefs that you have. So setting really high standards and holding your players accountable to those standards is a great thing. A good coach will tell you that they hold their players accountable because they love them and they care about them and they want to see them develop into great players, that they know that holding players accountable is a gift, and that they're not accountability is not something you do to someone. It's something you do for them. And that's why a good coach is not afraid to discipline their players and is not afraid to hold them accountable and hold them to high standards. So really, to me, the most important part, notice I haven't said anything about strategy yet. This is all about creating a fertile environment where growth and strategy can come into play. But then that would be the next thing is, if you're coaching second grade basketball just because you want to give back, that's fine. But as you matriculate up and you start working with older and more serious players, it's really important for coaches to continue to work on themselves and to work on their craft and making sure they're doing everything to improve their own leadership skills and communication skills. And they're learning the game. They're going to conferences and they're taking online classes and they're following the right people on social. If every day you're coming to practice and you're expecting your players to improve and get better, well, you need to model that same behavior. It's the same advice I gave the parents. We all as adults need to model the behavior we want to see in our kids. So you need to show up as the best version of yourself. You need to work on your coaching craft and learn new plays and learn new defenses and learn new ways, the tactical approaches to the game, because you're asking your players to improve, so you need to improve. So I think if you can create that culture, show everybody that you care, and constantly work on your own craft, if you can just do those three things, that'll set a really nice foundation for everything else.
No, I love that, and I'm so glad and thankful that you didn't share, X's and O's, and you approach it, from the space that you did. That's awesome advice. So we've covered all, three groups that particularly, listen to the full ride. I really appreciate you, Alan. Before I let you go, I want you to, you wrote a book, which is really popular, Raise Your Game. And it's a book that, I really think that, young athletes particularly should really get their hands on. I know you typically do some types of offering for teams that buy it, in bulk. But before we even get to that, can you talk about, what made you decide to write the book, and what can readers expect to find inside of it?
I've had so many books have a really profound impact on myself and my life philosophy and my perspective. So I just wanted to curate everything that I was able to learn from these great coaches and players and be able to pay that forward and share that with other coaches and players. And the book's called Raise Your Game, and you can go to raiseyourgamebook.com. You can get it on Amazon if you're a reader. You can get it on Audible if you prefer to listen. But really, it's all of the, and I say secrets in jest because there's no such thing as a secret, but it's all the secrets of high performance, of how you can improve both on and off the court. It's a great read for parents, for coaches, and for players. If anyone does want to order in bulk where they could get it for the entire team, they can just email me at alan@alansteinjr.com. I would say the book is incredibly applicable to anyone middle school or older. I have twin sons that are 10 years old. They've read it, and they can comprehend and understand the vast majority of it. But I definitely think middle and high school would really benefit. And I've tried to lace it with lots of stories to teach lessons so that it's more impactful. But there's also some practical advice and some things folks can share. So if you're looking to raise your game as a player, as a coach, or as a parent, I do believe that the book would be helpful. And again, you can get that at raiseyourgamebook.com.
That's awesome. And if you do, in teams and coaches, if you are listening, if you do decide to buy it for your whole team, when you reach out to Alan, when you reach out to Alan, tell him that you heard about his book and him through the Full Ride URECRUITU podcast, and I'm sure Alan's going to take good care of you.
I certainly will. I would love to, man.
Now, there's a lot of stuff we haven't even got to, but I just love the work that you're doing. I know you do a lot of. We spend a lot of time with athletes and high performance, but I know you do a lot of speaking with, corporations now. So for anyone who wants to bring you in to do a speaking engagement, let's let them know real quick how they can find you, your website, and then of course your Instagram, Twitter handle. Just, give yourself an opportunity to kind of promote what you do a little bit. Cause I really do appreciate you taking the time today.
Be happy to, certainly. And I speak to, not just folks in the corporate world, but I do speak to sports teams, to athletic departments, to entire schools and assemblies. And you can just go to alansteinjr.com. And I'm at Alan Stein Jr. on Instagram and Twitter. I love social engagement. So certainly anybody listening to this, if there was something that struck a chord, either in a positive or a negative way, if you want to discuss it, I'm always very open-minded to hearing other people's perspectives. Just drop me a line on social, and I would love to connect.
That's awesome. So, now, Alan, I always have a guest whenever they join us. I call it a winning play. And typically it's, if you're a former college athlete or a high school coach, or even a parent of a current or former student athlete, the goal of the winning play is to kind of help them, give them advice to help them take control of college recruiting. So while I have you, it doesn't have to be so much college recruiting, but why don't you provide our high school athletes particularly, with a winning play that's just going to help them, perform at a high level, and how that may translate to college recruiting. That's great. But even if it doesn't translate to college recruiting, but just in general, what advice would you love to have heard as a 16-year-old, 15-year-old that maybe someone didn't share with you?
To any player listening, I would say evaluate yourself off the court, so your leadership and how good of a teammate you are, as well as your skills on the court, and figure out what are the one or two things that really make you unique, or the one or two things that you do the best at a high level, and continue to double down on those. Make those as world-class as you can get them. If you're a great defender, take even more pride in being a great defender. If you're an excellent communicator and leader, work even harder on that. Because when it's time to go to college, while certainly people like to be well-rounded, and of course a coach would like a player that can do everything, but the reality is, outside of 10 to 15 players in the NBA, guys like LeBron and Giannis and KD, most players can't do everything equally well. You can usually do one or two things a little bit better than other things, and you need to make those things stick out even more. So instead of focusing on your weaknesses and getting those to be mediocre at best, focus on your strengths and try to get those as world-class as possible, because some college coach will need that specific skill set. If you're a knockdown three-point shooter, or you're an elite rebounder, or if you're just a great floor general who can navigate a team, double down on those things, because instead of trying to impress every coach with every skill, now you'll impress a handful of coaches that need your specific skill, and you'll greatly increase your chance of being able to play there.
Whoo, Alan, boy. I mean, that was fire. In other words, build on strengths. Play from your strength. You know, I always say, you know, you don't want to specialize in sports, you know, play multiple sports, but once you get inside your sport of choice, specialize in one or two things. So Steph Curry, no one's going to confuse him as being an all-world defender.
Nope.
But everyone knows that man can shoot the lights out. And you can apply that in every single sport. So, Alan, I love that. I appreciate you. Families, I hope you found value in today's episode. If you did, please be a good teammate and share it. Tag URECRUITU. That's at URECRUITU. Tag Alan Stein. But tag us, share it, because the more we can have people hear this type of messaging, the better we can all be. But until next time, this is your recruiting coach, Kito Delgado, reminding you that college recruiting starts with you. What steps are you taking today to earn an athletic scholarship tomorrow?